just share a little bit of a hot topic with you today. This has been something that I've been talking about quite a bit with clients, couples especially, and in a few groups. And I just thought, you know what, this really is an area that when we can actually learn how to not be offended, we can just change everything in our lives. We can avoid a whole lot of unnecessary conflict. And so I really wanted to just stop and share some of that with you today. So I want to just give you three of my best tips to avoid feeling offended. So I guess we all can probably relate to those moments where we were offended. Sometimes there'll be, depending on your temperament, sometimes you won't let anybody know that you're offended. Sometimes we will overtly let people know we're not happy about that. And it never ends well, right? Either whether we get offended in secret or whether we get offended overtly, it kind of wounds us. However, I just want us to understand that that is our choice. Now, some of you might say, how can you say it's my choice? Like, they intended to offend. Do you know half the time people are never ever out to offend you? They've just literally said something that has been a trigger for you, and they were none the wiser. They had no idea that that was going to trigger you. Now, I'm not really talking about the people who are intentionally out to upset you, hurt you, trigger you. I'm talking about just those everyday conversations, and generally between partners, where hubby says X to wifey and she's just deeply hurt and upset, and he's like, what's the problem? Or vice versa. So I'm trusting that it'd be really helpful for everybody to know how to not be offended, because it never feels great, right? So 3 tips I have for you today. And these are definitely worth writing down, because this is really what rescues marriages, restores friendships, and deals with those conflicts that can go on in the workplace. The first and most important thing I want to share with you is this statement. And it literally, if you hear it and catch it, will change everything for you, right? It's one of the most powerful statements I could share. And that is, nothing has meaning but the meaning we choose to give it. Right? I'm going to say that again because it's so powerful. Nothing has meaning but the meaning we choose to give it. Isn't that so liberating when you actually pause and think about that? Nothing has meaning but the meaning I actually give it. So what does that mean? That means you now are back in control, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is pick your battles, right? It's not necessary to jump on everything, to criticize something or be intentionally offended time after time after time again. Pick your battles. Now, there's a really powerful saying that I've always loved since I was a teenager, and that is, you can tell a wise man or woman by the things he or she doesn't say. All right, so that's step number 2. Pick your battles. You're not required to argue and fight and have your opinion over everything, right? So choose when it's time to have that, firm, assertive conversation. But, don't be that person that is just easily triggered and constantly arguing. Okay, it's not. We know people like that, and it's not fun to be around them at all. And the third thing is offense is a choice. Right? I'm going to share a really powerful analogy with you. Somebody that I know very well shared this probably about 17 years ago. Can't remember much else of what he shared from the platform, but this really stuck with me. And it's an analogy of cheese. So remember, the third tip is offense is a choice, right? So if you can liken offense to a bit of cheese on a mousetrap, right? So I want you to get that visual. Here's the cheese, here's the mousetrap. Now that little mouse is completely fine and safe until what? he takes the cheese, right? Once that little mouse takes the cheese represents the offense, takes the cheese, and what happens? Straight away, he is trapped. Literally cannot get out of that. And it's exactly the same with offense. It is your choice whether you take the cheese, the offense, or not take the cheese or the offense. Right? You always have a choice. Now, many people will try and suggest that they don't have a choice, but I'm telling you now, you absolutely do. You can blame everybody else for why you're offended, or you can choose to be responsible for that. Remembering, going back to tip number 1, nothing has meaning but the meaning we choose to give it. Secondly, remember, pick your battles. You know, you can tell a wise man or woman by the things that they don't say. So you don't have to be fighting and arguing over everything. Really powerful in a marriage. So important to just tongues, right? And I know that, I work with many clients, and sometimes they'll confess, I'll confess, that can be one of the most challenging things to do, because there's this righteousness that comes in that says, nope, not going to put up with that. Now, I'm not talking about abusive relationships. I'm just talking about your everyday arguments that couples can find themselves in. Bite your tongue. You don't have to fight that particular battle, right? And then remember the last one with the cheese, offense is a choice, because can I just finish up with this? When you have allowed offense to trap you, it's really, really difficult to get out of that, right? It's really difficult. And that's where relationships can be quite tense. Friendships can come to an end. Marriages can come to an end. Issues at work, because we're just deeply offended. So remember, it's your choice. So I'm not saying that you will never, ever, ever, ever be offended again. But I can definitely say that you apply these 3 things and watch what happens. Hubby or wifey says what she always says that used to trigger you and upset you, and all of a sudden it doesn't bother you. All of a sudden the first thought that goes into your mind is, hey, you know what? Nothing has meaning but the meaning I choose to give it. Not going to give it any unresourceful meaning. Or you just go, you know what? Not going to choose this one. I'm going to let this one slide. And thirdly, you have a choice. Don't take it, because once you allow offense to come in, you're completely trapped. So I hope that helps. Really wanted to share that with everybody, because there just seems to be a bit of a theme at the moment with clients or conversations with friends about how easily they're getting offended. And you know what, if I wasn't a coach, I'd probably have a very different conversation with them, because I'd probably validate them. Yes, you're right, I'd be angry too. However, I guess I have a very different take on it now. So I encourage you to share this video with somebody else to encourage and support them. Please just, make a note of if you found this helpful, and feel free to forward this, because more and more, I didn't go out to work with couples, but more and more I'm finding myself working with couples, and these are some of the really simple yet powerful things that I'm sharing with them. And I guess because it's I'm talking about a lot, I just thought, you know what, let's see if we can nip some things in the bud here and share this out there, and there can be 1 or 2, maybe 100 less offended people out there and happier relationships. So thanks guys for watching, and yeah, really appreciate if you wouldn't mind just making a comment down below so I know you found this valuable. All right, have a good evening. Bye.